Imam Amin Hasan Islahi writes, in case of sickness, the ceremonial bath and wudu can cause harm, and thus this relief was given. Similarly, in case of being on a journey, a person may encounter circumstances in which he might have to limit himself to tayammum only. For example, water may not be available in large quantities. In such cases, using it for bathing, etc., might leave it scanty for drinking, or there could be a chance that if a person starts preparing to have a bath, he might be left behind from his fellow companions of the caravan. Or a situation may arise when having a bath may become very difficult in a train, ship, or aeroplane that a person is traveling in. Amin Hasan Islahi, Tadabbur-e-Quran, Volume 2, page 303. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, by drawing an analogy with this directive of tayammum, wiped his socks and turban. Instead of washing the limbs they are worn on. He also allowed people to wipe their socks if they are worn after doing wudu. For a stationed person, this was allowed for 1 day, and for a traveler for 3 days. Another relief given by the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ on the basis of this analogy was that if the hair of women is plaited, then pouring water over it without disentangling it was enough. Still another relief on this basis was that if states which required a ceremonial bath to become pure take the form of sickness, then the ceremonial bath can be done once, and other prayers can be offered without it as well. Tayammum no doubt does not clean a person. However, a little deliberation shows that it serves as a reminder for the real means of achieving cleanliness, and as such has special importance. The temperament of the Shariah is that if a directive cannot be followed in its original form, or it becomes difficult to follow it, then lesser forms should be adopted to serve as its reminder. An advantage of this is that once circumstances return to normal, one becomes inclined to follow the directive in its original form. It is essential for the prayer that the direction of the Qibla be ascertained. It is obvious that without this ascertainment, congregational prayers cannot be arranged for. In divine religions, this directive has always been present because of this very reason. It is mentioned in Surah Yunus that when the Prophet Moses ﷺ started to organize the Israelites in Egypt on the basis of religion, the Almighty directed him to identify certain areas in Egypt for prayers, and the houses which they identify for the prayer should be designated as Qibla, and the congregational prayer should be offered while facing them. Later, this status was enjoyed by the Ark of the Covenant mentioned in Surah Baqarah until the Baytul Maqdis was constructed. When Muhammad ﷺ was called to prophethood, the Jews would pray while facing the Baytul Maqdis. He was also directed by the Quran to do the same and was told that the rationale behind this directive was to test the Ishmaelites that whether they follow the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ or disobey him because of their prejudice. Once this objective was achieved, the Qibla was reverted to Baytul Haram. Verse 144 of Surah Baqarah quoted earlier states this directive. The verse Masjidul Haram of this verse refers to the place of worship in whose center lies the Baytullah. The words which direct Muslims to turn towards it are فَوَلِّ وَجْهَكَ شَطْرَ الْمَسْجِدِ الْحَرَامِ, or so turn your face towards the holy mosque. It is evident from these words that the requirement is just to face the Baytullah and not to face it dead straight. However, it is emphasized that wherever the Muslims are, whether inside the Masjid al-Haram or outside it, wherever they are, they should face this mosque while praying. The reason for this emphasis is that the Jews and the Christians, while inside the Baytul Maqdis, would make it the Qibla. However, outside it, they would make the east or the west as their Qibla. Consequently, Muslims were directed that whether stationed at their residences or while traveling, and whether inside the Masjid al-Haram or outside it, at all places they should face this mosque while praying. Obviously, circumstances in which it is difficult to ascertain the direction of the Masjid al-Haram, or when a person is forced to pray while walking or on some means of transport, there is an exception to this directive. It is reported that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would pray the optional prayer on his camel in the direction it walked, thinking that stopping it would cause problems for the caravan. 5. Rituals of the prayer. Following are the rituals of the prayer which are laid down in the Shariah. The prayer should begin with Raf'ul Yadayn, or raising high both hands. Qiyam, or standing upright, should ensue. It should be followed by the Ruku, or kneeling down. Qawma, or standing up after the Ruku, should then be done. 2 consecutive prostrations should then follow. In the second and last rakat of each prayer, a person should do qarda, or to sit with legs folded backwards. When a person intends to end the prayer, he can do so by turning his face during this qarda. These rituals are substantiated by the consensus of the companions radhiyallahu anhum and the perpetual adherence of the ummah to these rituals. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ is reported to have said, "Sallu kama ra'aytumuni usalli." Offer the prayer in the very manner you see me offering it. Al-Bukhari, Al-Jami' As-Sahih, page 104, hadith number 631. Consequently, for this purpose, the thorough and befitting manner in which the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ used to say his prayer is detailed out below. Raf'ul Yadayn. Sometimes the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would do Raf'ul Yadayn while saying the takbir, sometimes before it and sometimes after it. His hands would open and he would not completely join the fingers of the hand nor open them completely. He would sometimes raise his hands up to the level of his shoulders and sometimes as high as the upper portion of the ears. It is evident from certain narratives that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ at some instances did the Raf'ul Yadayn before and after the Ruku. Similarly, he would also do it while getting up for the third rakat and sometimes before and after prostrating too. Qiyam. In the Qiyam position, he would stand upright with hands tied in front. He would hold his hands in a manner that a part of the right hand would be placed on the back of the left hand, a part of it below the left hand, and a part on the wrist. He stopped people from tying hands in a manner that the left hand be placed on top of the right hand. Ruku. While doing the Ruku, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would place his hands on his knees such that it would seem that he is grasping them. The fingers would be open and placed before the knees. He would not let his elbows touch his sides. Both hands would be stretched like a bow. He would neither bend his head nor lift it upwards, but would keep it aligned with his back and would say, "O people, a person who did not straighten his back while kneeling and prostrating has in fact not prayed." Qawma. When the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would rise after kneeling, he would stand up straight such that his spine would come back to its original position. Generally, he would stand for the same amount of time as he would kneel, but sometimes he would stand for longer periods of time, giving the impression that he had forgotten to proceed for the next ritual. He would remark, "A person's prayer would not merit God's attention who, while rising and kneeling, does not straighten his back and goes into prostration." Ahmad ibn Hanbal, Musnad, Volume 3, page 336, Hadith number 10420. Prostration. When the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would go into prostration, he would join his fingers and spread his palms. The fingers would face the Kaaba, and the hands would be placed adjacent to the shoulders and sometimes in front of the ears, and so far apart that a baby goat could pass below them. He would also keep apart his arms from his body to the extent that a person sitting behind him could see the whiteness of his armpits. He would place his feet upright and would turn the fingers of his feet in the direction of the Kaaba. At one instance, joining both heels is also mentioned. He would say, I have been directed to prostrate through my forehead, nose, both hands, both knees, and the 4 feet. Al-Bukhari, Al-Jami al-Sahih, page 132, hadith number 812. Jalsa. In between the 2 prostrations, the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would spread his left foot and composedly sit on it. He would use up almost equal time in Jalsa, prostration, and Qawma. However, sometimes, like the Qawma, he would sit in the Jalsa for a long time, giving the impression that he had forgotten to proceed. It has also been reported that sometimes, instead of standing up straight after the second prostration, he would sit down and then stand up for the next rakat. Qa'da. The Prophet Muhammad ﷺ would sit in Qa'da in just the same way as in Jalsa, by spreading the left foot and sitting on it. The right foot would be upright, and he would spread his right hand on the right knee and left one on the left knee, and would raise his pointing finger. He would do this by coiling all other fingers and placing his thumb on the center finger, and sometimes would make a circle with both of them. In the last rakat of the prayer, he would sometimes sit in a manner that he would place his left hip on the floor and take out the left foot towards the right one. Near the end of the prayer, he would generally turn to both his right and his left. He would complete all these rituals of the prayer with great poise and calm, and would counsel people to do so as well. 6. Utterances of the prayer. Following are the various utterances of the prayer. The prayer shall begin by saying, Allahu Akbar. Then Surah Fatiha shall be recited during the Qiyam, after which, according to one's convenience, a portion from the rest of the Quran shall be recited. While going into the ruku, Allahu Akbar shall be pronounced. While rising from the ruku, Sami Allahu liman hamida shall be uttered. While going for the prostration and rising from them, Allahu Akbar shall be pronounced. While rising from the Qada for the Qiyam, Allahu Akbar shall once again be pronounced. At the end of the prayer, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah shall be said. The prayer leader or Imam will always loudly pronounce Allahu Akbar, Sami Allahu liman hamida, and Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. In the first 2 rakat of the Maghrib and Isha prayers, and in both rakat of the Fajr, Friday, and Eid prayers, the recital shall be loud. The recital shall always be silent in the 3rd rakat of Maghrib and in the 3rd and 4th rakat of the Isha prayer. In the Zohar and Asr prayers, the recital shall be silent in all the rakat. These are the utterances prescribed by the Shariah for the prayer. They are in Arabic, and like the practices of the prayer, are validated by the consensus and tawatur of the Muslim Ummah. Besides these, a person can say any utterance in his own language which expresses the sovereignty of the Almighty, gratitude towards Him, or is a supplication. In this regard, the sayings and preferences of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ are enlisted below.